So today we are in the 7th episode of the 30 Years' War series by Kings and Generals, which is so far one of my favorite series we've ever covered. I just love it. Right up there with the Italian Wars in terms of just how unhinged and how wild everything is becoming. I love this. I love when wars and just history become unhinged and you just don't know what the heck is gonna happen. Like, this is fun. Man, I'm so glad I stuck with the history content, because that was not the original plan for this channel. I was not gonna be a history reactor, but I'm so glad that I stuck with it, because this is better than anything. Let's get to it, guys. I'm just excited.
The epic Battle of Freiburg in 1644 showed that the Holy Roman Empire still had enough strength to defend against the Franco-Swedish alliance. But the empire was getting low on resources, their allies were leaving their cause, and their enemies were on all sides. A new Swedish offensive in 1645 proved able to push the Habsburgs to their limit, as the brilliant commander Lennart Torstensson was eager to outshine even his late king Gustavus Adolphus. The Battle of Jankau was a great chance to prove if Torstensson had what it takes to do just that. Although the Bavarian leader prevailed in the Battle of Freiburg using his defensive skills, Mercy's indecisiveness gave the French commanders the opportunity to recall most of the nearby garrisons, and within 24 hours, more than 6,000 men were marching to join them. The Bavarian commander probably knew that the enemy would be shortly reinforced and decided to retreat. His army still lacked horses, so retreating into the open would have been dangerous. Simultaneously, the French might have gone for Mannheim or Stuttgart, and losing these cities wasn't an option. As a result, on the 7th, Mercy moved to a more defensible St. Peter Valley. The French received their reinforcements the next day, and started chasing the Imperials on the 9th. However, due to lack of knowledge of the terrain, the French advance was slow, so Condé sent General Rosen and his cavalry to cut the Bavarian retreat. On the 10th, Rosen almost succeeded in doing that, but the slowness of the extremely tired French infantry didn't allow Condé to build on Rosen's actions. By the end of the day, Mercy broke through the French cavalry and was in Villingen. Condé stayed in the area for a day, taking the imperial outposts, and as Freiburg's strategic importance was lower than that of the regions of Baden and Württemberg, the French began their march north. Mercy changed his trajectory and started moving parallel to them. However, he was still wary of the enemy cavalry, and therefore moved with caution. This meant that he was too far away to do anything when Condé besieged Philipsburg on the 25th of August and took it on September 12th. This threatened Stuttgart and Mannheim, which forced Mercy to get closer to the French and start building fortifications at Neckarsulm. Condé possibly thought about attacking, but winter was coming, so the campaign of 1644 was over. To the north, Torstensson was preparing for the campaign of 1645. He now had around 16,000 troops and an agreement with the French and Transylvanians to attack Vienna together, while the Protestant minority in Upper Austria was asked to revolt. It was expected that this four-pronged attack would finally break Habsburg resistance. The Empire.
So I know that they want to weaken. I know this has gone beyond religion. This is political, guys, and I know that the French and the Swedish really wanted to stick it to the Habsburgs, but I'm wondering what the goal is. I mean, obviously weaken the Habsburgs, but what do they want to what do they mean by weaken it, though? That's kind of what I'm interested in. If they win, what kind of concessions would they impose upon the Habsburgs? Would they just be content with just taking land, or limiting their, you know what I mean? I know they want to weaken them, that's obvious, due to rivalries in Europe and just how powerful the Habsburgs are, but how do they plan on weakening them if they were to win, is my question. Because like, I've been wondering, like, what's the end goal? Like, obviously win the war, but after, like, how do they want to reshape Europe or whatever? That's kind of what I'm wondering, is if they're even thinking that far ahead. Granted, I know it's a bit iffy. I don't even know who wins the war personally. Usually I come into these videos knowing the full outcome and who wins. I don't at this point. I know the Holy Roman Empire obviously goes on until Napoleon eventually destroys it, so it's not like that's gonna go away. The Habsburgs are still around, you know, later on, so... Yeah, how is this gonna end?
Situation was dire. Denmark left the war and was negotiating with Sweden for a future treaty, which meant Torstensson was free to attack. Gallus's action basically destroyed the Imperial army in the area, so the new commander Hatzfeld had to rebuild it from scratch. Reinforcements from Bohemia, Hungary and Silesia brought his numbers to 12,000, but those were untrained and badly equipped troops, so Hatzfeld asked the emperor for more troops. Ferdinand III pleaded with Bavarian Elector Maximilian I to help, and the latter sent a letter to Mercy ordering him to send a portion of his force. Indeed, General Werth and his 5,000 soon joined Hatzfeld at Pilsen, where the new imperial commander was trying to weld his soldiers into a real army. However, Torstensson wasn't going to give his foes the time they needed, and began his campaign months earlier than expected, on January 19th.
Oh wow.
The Swedes moved
into seizing the initiative. So Taurus, is it okay if I just call him Tor, guys? I don't want to keep butchering his name, but Tor, that's my nickname for you. So I have to give it to Tor. He mentioned that he wanted to outshine Gustavus. So obviously he's ambitious and he really wants to prove himself, and I guess we'll see if he can.
Bohemia via Pretznitz 5 days later, completely surprising Hatzfeld and crushing a few of his outposts in the process. Unfortunately for Torstensson, he fell ill, which slowed down the advance. That and the thawing allowed the Imperials to somewhat recover. Still, when the Swedes passed them from the east on the 18th of February, Hatzfeld was in a difficult position, as Torstensson could have attacked either Prague or Vienna. It became clear that the Swedish commander was going for the capital of the empire, and Hatzfeld force-marched his men south, managing to reach the town of Horeștevița first on the 25th. This allowed him to secure the crossings of the Votava River. For 4 days straight, the Swedes attempted to cross by attacking head-on and by attempting a feigned retreat, but nothing worked, so on March 2nd, Torstensson moved west, which made the Imperials abandon their positions and pursue him. Once again, the Swedes were slower, as Hatzfeld double-timed his soldiers to take positions at Tabor. Indeed, on the 4th of March, the tired Imperial army was in the town with the Swedes to the northwest. With no time to lose, Hatzfeld moved to the north again, this time establishing a defensive position near the village of Jankau. Soon, Torstensson was in the area.
Alright, moment of truth. Battle time. So, I'm wondering if all these forced marches are gonna affect, the Imperials, you know, just out of sheer tiredness or whatnot. And, again, the Swedish definitely had, you know, thanks to the reforms of Gustavus, were an incredibly powerful army on the rise, but we did cover last time that the Imperials did find a way to counter them simply by ducking. So I'm wondering if those tactics, if it's gonna come into play, and if they've already adapted enough to keep fighting. Though that was the Spanish, I think, mainly. This specific Imperial army is kind of brand new, and I don't think fully trained, so yeah, I don't know, I guess we'll see.
At this point in the war, both armies liked to send cavalry detachments to raid and counter-raid, so when large concentrations happened, the armies were unusually cavalry heavy. The Imperials had 11,000 horsemen across 50 squadrons, and 5,000 footmen in 6 brigades, supported by 26 guns. Although the Swedish army was similar in terms of the numbers, it was far superior in terms of training, equipment, unit cohesion, and most importantly, unlike Hatzfeld, Torstensson had the complete obedience of his subordinates. The latter also had artillery advantage with 60 guns.
Yeah, definitely. The Swedish army is a combined force, as we cover with the reforms of Gustavus, who reminded me a lot of Alexander, at least in terms of the way his army kind of relied on, like, the combined arms sense. Like, I kind of got, like, reminded of Alexander and the Great, you know? And again, like I said, the Swedish, as we know, like later on, especially during the Great Northern War era, become like probably the most powerful force in Europe, or at least one of, enough for everyone else to kind of jump them through a coalition, which tells you how powerful they were, and they're on the rise right now as we see. Their quality and stuff and training is amazing, especially compared to their enemies, as we've covered, but we did see the Spanish start to kind of adapt to them a while back and find ways to counter them, especially with the whole ducking situation from their fire. So I'm wondering if, but then again, like I said, this army that they're facing in particular seems to have issues with command. Meanwhile, the Swedish are completely unified and effective in their training and discipline, so I feel like that might give them the edge, you know, in terms of a victory. I don't know who will win, but I'm kind of betting towards the Swedish, thanks to their superior training and their superior unity. You know what I mean? So I'm leaning towards the Swedish winning this one, guys, but I guess we'll see, right?
Alongside 6,000 infantry in 8 brigades and 10,000 cavalry in 47 squadrons. On the afternoon of the 5th of March, the Swedish army approached the Kotishenka River. Their commander ascended to the top of Hill 554 to observe the enemy. His counterpart occupied a great defensive position among the hills and woods, which limited the Swedish artillery advantage and made any frontal cavalry charge impossible, so Torstensson had to think of a better plan. Around 5 AM the next morning, part of his right-wing cavalry joined him on the hill, and then turned left and started marching north. Hatzfeld was informed of this, and deduced that although his left flank was more vulnerable, the Swedes would attack from his right. Meanwhile, the rest of the Swedish army reformed in the dark into columns, with infantry on the left, cavalry in the centre, and guns and baggage on the right, and started moving to the south. Swedish cavalry to the north was making much more noise, but Hatzfeld was still not sure about his left flank. The highest elevation in the area was Chapel Hill to the southwest of his position, and the Imperial leader probably wanted to use this high ground to get a better idea of what the Swedes were up to. However, it is not clear if the commander of the left wing, Gotz, was ordered to move his entire force to occupy Chapel Hill, or just create a forward outpost there. Hatzfeld himself went to his right flank to conduct a personal reconnaissance, which basically left his army leaderless. Gotz either misunderstood the directive, or decided that it was a good moment to show his disobedience, so he started moving the first echelon of the Imperial left towards Chapel Hill. While most of the troops marched slowly, the dragoons were double-timed with orders to occupy the elevation. They established themselves on the hill, but around 7:30 AM the Swedish vanguard was in the area, and the dragoons fled without offering any resistance, soon informing Gotz. The latter concluded that his foes were trying to get their own forward outpost, and continued towards Chapel Hill.
Okay, so let's see. The Imperial left is completely gone now. They just left under Gots, and already we're seeing the issue, right, with command among the Imperials. I'd be surprised if the Imperial wins. I'm really now leaning towards the Swedish winning this battle.
Simultaneously, Hatzfeld finally started to understand that Torstensson had tricked him and no attack was coming from the right. He personally galloped towards Gotz to inform him that the Swedes would attack from the south or southwest, but when he reached the left flank, he only found the second echelon under Pompei, and these troops were also going for the elevation.
My goodness, what a mess already. And Tor's already like tricked him and moved, so like what a mess, right?
Enraged, the Imperial commander rode to find Gotz.
Battle's about to start, this dude's already lost control. And he's just like, I need to go find him. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the Imperials are floundering, guys.
Gotz moved fast. He didn't scout the terrain ahead, and had no idea that the Swedes had already formed up on the hill and to the west of it. At 8:15, he ended up around the village of Nozakov, and almost immediately his disjointed units were attacked by the enemy. That was the moment when Hatzfeld at last found his unruly underling. Gotz was ordered to retreat, but began to argue and insisted that they needed to retake Chapel Hill. It is not clear if Hatzfeld was persuaded, or just decided that the only way to save his wayward left was to bring the whole army to the area, but he started galloping towards his main forces. Gotz's troops were attacking, but these attacks were disorganized and easily repelled by the Swedes. As their artillery arrived at Chapel Hill, they started sending deadly volleys against the Imperials. Ever stubborn, Gotz refused to retreat, and his charismatic personality held his troops together for some time, despite all the losses. However, around 9 AM, Gotz was killed by musket fire, and that broke his troops.
Yeah, that dude got himself killed right there. Like, his insubordination and stuff, he kind of brought his death on himself. Dare I say, like... Yeah, complete mess already. He's made of the entire situation.
Swedish cavalry started pursuing them, but by that time, the Imperial footmen under Zeus were able to form a defensive line in the woods to the south of Nozakov. The cavalry charge was repelled, but as Zeus's infantry had to move fast, they left their artillery behind, and now were under withering artillery fire from the Swedes. Unlike Gotz, Zeus wasn't too proud to retreat, and quickly repositioned in the forest to the northeast. Torstensson smelled blood.
Yeah, the constant repositioning is unique. I'm really liking that aspect of this battle, because again, like, I know it sounds easy, just move your army, right, positioning, but the thing is, like, especially with cohesion and getting everyone to form the line, that takes a while, you know, like, and something as simple as repositioning your army could take a long time if not drilled well enough. And as we cover, the Swedish, their training is so great that, you know, they could easily, like, reposition multiple times and with great cohesion, which is impressive on its own, shows just great training and whatnot. And the way they're moving here and there, and it really is impressive, you know, something as simple, or at least sounds as simple as just moving your army, requires training. And, again, the Swedish, as we've covered, thanks to the reforms and whatnot, are just beyond impressive, you know?
And was eager to destroy the enemy here and now, so he sent part of the cavalry to take Hill 535, which threatened the south of the Imperial infantry. Fortunately for the latter, Hatzfeld soon arrived and reformed what remained of Gotz's cavalry. He then repositioned to the south of Zeus just in time to repel the first attack by the Swedish squadrons. Now that the entirety of Torstensson's army was between Chapel Hill and Hill 535, he attacked Zeus head-on and reinforced his right flank to push Hatzfeld, who was in turn reinforced by Wirth's left flank cavalry. The initial Swedish attack in the centre was repelled, as part of Wirth's cavalry charged from the flank, but the Swedes continued, and slowly but surely the Imperials were pushed back by their superior arms and guns. It was impossible for Hatzfeld to continue his resistance, so by noon he ordered the army to disengage and retreat to the north. Although the Swedes attempted to chase their foe, Wirth managed to use his cavalry to expertly cover the escape. The Swedes showed their excellent discipline and formed up in their initial alignment with cavalry on the wings and with the centre consisting of infantry and cavalry.
Yeah, this battle is going all over the place. Like I said, I'm beyond impressed by just how the front of war just keeps shifting and just how everyone keeps positioning. And again, this is a great demonstration, I feel, of the Swedish training and their mobility and flexibility in combat. Just like, look at the way they keep moving and positioning themselves differently. Like, I'm very impressed, though I don't want to completely ignore the Imperials, considering that, you know, they had a really bad position overall in this battle. Like, they're still putting up quite a good counter and at least fighting retreat in a sense, so again, I don't want to ignore them completely. I'm just very amazed by the Swedish.
They captured some of the artillery lost by the enemy and placed it on Hill 537 alongside their own, with the baggage train behind the main army. Despite the fact that his army was clearly the winner of the battle, Torstensson wasn't eager to chase the enemy across broken terrain, so he decided to allow the Imperials to flee. Meanwhile, Hatzfeld was worried that his battered army would not survive a fighting retreat, so he was going to wait until sunset in order to avoid the Swedes. To that end, his troops formed up between Jankau and Herzin, where he had previously erected 1-meter-high fortifications. On the left, he had Wirth's mostly intact Bavarian cavalry, with Bruy commanding whatever was left of Gotz's cavalry and the 2nd Echelon cavalry from the centre on the right, with an infantry brigade joining them. In the centre, he positioned 5 infantry brigades and Kallenberg's Saxon cavalry reserve alongside his artillery. He now had just 9 guns and had no chance to survive any artillery duel, so he hoped the uneven forest terrain would cover his army. The Imperials also claimed Hill 548 as a forward outpost. The Swedish commander learned about the new Imperial disposition and concluded that he couldn't leave a strong enemy in his rear and march for Prague or Vienna, so around 1 PM he sent 400 musketeers with 10 cannons to take Hill 548. The German infantry unit occupying it retreated without offering any resistance. Hatzfeld rebuked Zuis and Bruy for allowing it to happen. After ordering them to retake the hill, he returned to Herzin. And once again, his instructions were misunderstood, and his captains sent almost their entire force.
Boy, what is with this command structure? Like, everyone, like, between the misinterpretation of orders and just subordinates just deciding screw your orders, I'm gonna do what I want. Like, again, compare that with the Swedish, who are a finely tuned machine of war and who are operating seamless, like, almost fluidly, I have to say. Meanwhile, like, the Imperials are just, like, all over the place, you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing, what the heck?
To take the hill, a disproportionate response that took them out of their great defensive position, to say the least. Obviously, this counterattack succeeded, and the Imperials drove back the musketeers and captured all 10 guns. However, this action showed Torstensson that the enemy was still in the area in full force. He immediately sent his left under Douglas and centre under Moutenja, while Wittenberg's right was left as the reserve, with guns on Hill 537 providing artillery support. Indeed, the fact that the Swedes had artillery on that hill was a great surprise for the Imperials. Artillery just wasn't as mobile during that period, and the fact that it was moved into new positions so quickly proved the professionalism of the Swedish army.
Again, and their mobile artillery is just showing how OP that it is. It's such a great skill. Again, the reforms of Gustavus are amazing, and it goes to show he's turned the Swedish army, like I said, as like a fine, effective fighting machine, you know what I mean?
Torstensson was adding a new military tactic that would become key in the next centuries. For the Imperials, this professionalism meant death, as Swedish artillery killed hundreds with each volley, especially among the Imperial right. Indeed, when Douglas's horse attacked here, they easily dispersed the enemy, breaking them and sending them into full flight, while Bry was killed. The Swedes weren't as successful in the centre, as the high ground allowed the Imperial footmen to dig in, and the guns they had captured were effective, so Mortenya's charge here was stopped, and the two sides were then locked in a bitter melee. The Imperial left flank was relatively unscathed, and was ordered to attack Torstensson's right side. Wittenberg didn't expect this attack, and it took his troops by surprise. Most of the first echelon was routed, while the second was now chased by Wirth, who was probably eager to destroy it and then swing back north. During the chase, the Swedes retreated close to their baggage train, and that was too tempting for the Imperial troops. They allowed the Swedes to slip away and started looting. The wives of the Swedish officers were captured here, including Torstensson's wife.
I'm sandwiched between the two generations.
Okay, that seems to be the biggest blow to the Swedish side so far. Their baggage trains being jumped.
Eventually, 5 squadrons attempted to continue the chase, but by that time the Swedes had reformed their ranks.
Oh no.
Their counterattack began around 2:30 and was fast and furious. The Bavarians didn't expect that and were completely routed in a matter of minutes.
Man, they had their best showing right there, the Imperials, and they got completely wrecked. Man.
Proved to be too much to the least disciplined part of the Imperial army. The Saxons just recently joined the Habsburg cause and just weren't as invested. Immediately after the left wing was crushed, Kallenberg ordered his horsemen to leave the field, abandoning Zeus's infantry to their fate. Hatzfeld's only remaining cavalry attempted to wheel around the centre and attack the Swedish centre from behind, but Mortenya had enough reserves to block them, and soon Douglas sent reinforcements who crushed this detachment.
Complete domination from the Swedish side. They humiliated the Imperials right here. This was so one-sided, this battle. Wow.
Hatzfeld's infantry was surrounded on Hill 548. Although they managed to defend for an hour, soon it was all over. The battle was very bloody, and the winners lost 2,000 dead and as many wounded, while the Imperial casualties were more than 10,000, half of them prisoners, including Hatzfeld and many other officers.
Holy crap.
The inability of the Imperial commanders to strike an accord, alongside the superiority of the Swedish troops and officers, proved to be too much for the Habsburg army to overcome. The road to the Habsburg capital was open, with Torstensson seemingly closer to complete victory than his late king Gustavus Adolphus ever was. But not everything was so simple, and our next episode will prove it. So make sure you are subscribed.
Yeah, what the heck is gonna stop the Swedish advance now? Alright, so he's done for the most part. I'm gonna jump to the next episode. I'll see you guys tomorrow when we get there.